At that point, I don't think Mikhail would question him on it then. I think he'd be in a state of shock. He wouldn't really know immediately how to react to that. I think he would just step up to Dusk and be like, how did it happen? It wouldn't be a demanding thing at first, just almost sympathetic. Mikhail he's not an evil wolf. He's not really confrontational or aggressive in any way. That wasn't him at all. It's never been Mikhail. Even with Crevice Lake, he really wanted to take the role of a pacifist. He didn't want to attack Crevice Lake. He made it very clear to Charm when she asked for help, I will not attack them, I will not hurt them. I will help you take territory, but I'm certainly not going to kill any Crevice Lake wolves. That's what got Aspen killed. I'm not risking my family. I can help you be safe, I can help keep you safe by taking territory, but I'm not going to hurt anybody if I can help it. And that was always the stance that he took. Occasionally, he'd still get into arguments and fights with them just to get them away, but he wouldn't pursue them ever. So I don't see Mikhail automatically going to Dusk and being like, this is all your fault. If anything, I think he'd be shocked, he'd be saddened. I don't even know if he'd know how to react right away just because he's like, my daughter's gone. I think at this point, Teo would step up and he would see Dusk's condition and kind of take the reins while Mikhail's just kind of standing there in shock, not really knowing what to say, and ask Dusk to come back and have food and water. Kirby would overhear this conversation, and this is where things would take a more serious toll. So Kirby has always had no chill, and I do believe that she has always favorited her daughters, always. And maybe even that's why they became the heirs, even though, yes, we voted them. For story purposes, it would be very easy to say that maybe Kirby was the one that pushed it where they would be the heirs. Like, give our daughters a chance. They're strong, independent females. Give them a chance. And maybe she pushed for that. And so she would hear that Dawn is gone and go to Dusk, and she would be far more demanding. What happened? Where is she? Where is my daughter? Where is my baby? And then I think Dusk would just continue to say, she's gone. They took her life, she's gone. And then she would continue to push, why didn't you protect her? You are supposed to protect her. She's your mate. And then again, I think Teo would step in and say, this can be a discussion for later. And the kind of like looks at the pups and motions to them, essentially saying this is not a discussion to have in front of them. I think Kirby would glare and she would be very perturbed, but she would let it go because even though she's not very lovey-dovey with children, she's not stupid. She knows that this is not a conversation to have in front of children, especially children that just lost their mom and lost a sibling. And so they will make their way back. I kind of love that Teo did get to come into the situation because I feel like in some ways he can be the mediator, which is hilarious because of where he was in the beginning. He was so full of rage. I feel like he would almost be in more of a Kirby situation of being accusatory and demanding of information, but now Teo is essentially saying, whoa, wait, we can have this discussion later. Let's back off a little bit. But I don't think that's going to make good rapport with Kirby at all, unfortunately. But I do have kind of a fun thing for her in Sundance later. And I don't want y'all to hate Kirby. So you have to remember that even though, yes, we're seeing Dusk's side of the story, Kirby's acting that way because that is her daughter, right? And so, no, that's not the best way to react. But she just found out her daughter died. Her baby died. And that's not an easy thing to take in. So she's really struggling with that. And the only way she knows how to react is with rage and anger. She's never been one to be sad. She just fights everything off. And so this is how she's doing that. She's like, I'm just going to fight this with words. So they make their way back to the rendezvous site, and the pups are introduced to each other. Obviously, pups being with each other is great. There's really no problems other than maybe a little bit of like rough housing and maybe some slight bullying that The adults would easily break up, but other than that, the pups get along really well. I actually have a feeling that Slate and Stygander would get along really well, with Slate being the only boy pup, and then Stygander was also the only boy pup in the end. They would almost have somewhat of a small bond. I'm hoping to play that into the story later on, but I like the idea that they had somewhat of a bond. And they kind of became brothers in a way. So they get back, and Aurora is there with the pups, and she sees Dusk and realizes that Dawn is not with him, and she does the same thing. Is Dawn okay? She's not aggressive about it. She's just asking, is Dawn okay? What happened? Are you okay? And Dusk tells the truth, and he'll probably just be emotional and be like, it happened so fast. I couldn't do anything. And as soon as he says that, then Kirby will step in and she'll say, what do you mean you couldn't do anything? You didn't fight back? You didn't fight for her life? And at this point, I want to say it was something that Breadcrumb mentioned. At this point, I think Dusk would get a little bit of courage to step in and say, what do you mean I didn't fight for? Of course I fought for her life. I fought for my life so that the pups had a parent. I didn't let her die. They came out of nowhere. It was an ambush. And he would defend himself a little bit. And I really appreciate you, Breadcrumb, for mentioning that, because it would make sense for Dusk to have worked through some of this and say, like, no, you're taking this too far. I was not perfect in this situation, but you're making it sound like I killed her myself. And so he would stand up for himself and say, no, I made sure that I didn't die after she fell to take care of these pups. And I think at this point, Mikhail would finally come out of his shocked state. And hearing that, he would take it the wrong way. Like, so you only cared about yourself. And that's not at all what Dusk is saying. Essentially what Dusk is saying is that he realized it was too late, and instead of fighting and losing and dying to where the pups would have also died, he made sure he stayed alive for the pups, which is the right decision. He did the right thing. He 100% did the right thing. As soon as he realized Dawn was gone, there was no point in him fighting to the death. No point. Those pups would have died on their own. Mikhail and Kirby would definitely not have known that the pups were there. They would have died. Either Crevice Lake would have found them, a coyote would have found them, they would have run off on their own and got lost, got killed by something else, another predator, another wolf, doesn't matter. They would have died. So Dusk did the right thing, but the way that he worded it, Mikhail didn't take it right. And so Mikhail will then butt in and say, so you were too busy worrying about yourself than my daughter. You saved yourself and let my daughter die. And now you have to remember, like I said before, and I'm not defending their actions, but these are parents that lost a daughter. These are also parents that have never lost a pup before. Now, Dawn wasn't a pup when she died, but Mikhail, guys, has literally not lost a pup. He's not lost one pup. He's never gone through that grief before. Ever. So Dawn is essentially, other than the loss of his brother, which is not quite the same, this is the first time he's experienced losing a child. He's overreacting because he's never been able to experience loss in this way, to cope with the loss of a pup. Whereas Teo, for example, he's lost 3 pups now. He's experienced the loss of a child, but Mikhail never has. And so right now, Mikhail is kind of like brutally interrogating him, like, you know, who was it? What did you do? Like, just trying to figure out what happened. And I think he's just trying to figure out what happened, but it's very much coming across like, you're useless. You didn't take care of her. This is your fault. It's coming across that way to Dusk, and even to the pups, and maybe even Teo, because Teo then steps in and says, enough, which is a big step for Teo. So Teo just got there. He's still unsure how his brother feels about him, even though they had that hug in the beginning and they've been able to have a few talks and bond a little bit, this all happened pretty much immediately after Teo arrived. They had like one night together and a morning together, and then this happened. So Teo's being very brave. He's risking essentially getting kicked out of this new pack he's formed with his brother by stepping in between them. And so Teo steps in front of Mikhail and he looks at him, and instead of picking sides, he just says, "Brother, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry you've lost your daughter." But he also lost a mate, his queen, his love. Let's mourn together rather than fight each other. And so this is huge, huge for Teo. I think Kirby would kind of have a low growl at this point, and then Sundance would kind of step beside her mate and say, "The pups need rest. They don't need to overhear this. They lost their mom. You've lost your daughter. He's lost his mate. Let's mourn and grieve together, but still be a family." And so, like I said, big step, big step. But Teo has had to learn a lot of this kind of talk and how to be a mediator because of spreading the waves. He's had to learn how to de-escalate situations. I'm sure he's come up to groups of wolves to talk about the waves, and some may have agreed and some disagreed in the same group. And him having to calm them down and say things like, "Think about it. You don't have to change anything yet. I'm just telling you what I know. I'm sharing with you what I've learned. I'm hoping that this can be a hope to you." But he's had to learn this kind of de-escalation thing that he's got. And sometimes it doesn't work, and that's when he's had to fight back for his life. And he's really unsure what's going to happen, but he's hoping, desperately hoping, that he can de-escalate this. I think Mikhail would give in first, easily, because he loves family. And even though, yes, he's lost his daughter and he's just kind of perturbed at Dusk right now, I think he's more perturbed at the situation than at Dusk. He would sigh pretty heavily and just admit, "You're right." And then tell Dusk to rest with his pups and that they would go get food. I think that Mikhail, if anything, would give Dusk more of a cold shoulder, but I absolutely don't think Mikhail would continue to attack Dusk verbally. And I've thought a lot about this because I've painted Mikhail, like I said, to be a pacifist. And even though in some ways for my story that I'm spinning, I need a particular pup to be mad at him, I think the way that he reacted initially is enough. But he is going to give Dusk the cold shoulder. He's not going to attack him. He's not going to be mean or say hateful things or even interrogate him anymore. He's just going to kind of ignore him. And that is his way of coping with it for right now. Kirby, however, is not going to be as kind. And again, I don't want you guys to hate Kirby. This is just who Kirby is. And remember, Kirby is Dawn's mother. Dawn had a strong queen-like attitude. Well, she got it from Kirby. And so Kirby, even though she will not say anything to Dusk, she will make clear actions to let him know that he is lesser than they are. He will have to eat far away from the den. He will get plenty of food, but he will not get the, like, scrumptious food. So, like, there are certain parts of an animal that are special. A lot of times, before we found out that there were no alphas in wolf packs, there were still wolves that, because of being the breeding pair, in some ways, I think they did get better portions of food because they needed it for pups. It makes a lot of sense in a family dynamic when you look back at those things. And it's so cringy now to see documentaries where it's like the alpha, and I'm like, no, stop. But I used to believe that, like, for a long time, even into my YouTube career. I've learned a lot about wolves just by playing this game, hearing from y'all. Y'all are so educated and so amazing with the knowledge that you know. You've made me learn a lot, and you've made me want to research a lot. And so In this case, in our story, Cupi and Mikhail are getting like the special organs, and they're giving, or Cupi specifically is giving Dusk kind of the not so good meats. She's making it very obvious that she doesn't like him, doesn't trust him, and blames him for what happened. And Mikhail, sticking beside his mate, and the fact that he also is disappointed that Dusk didn't do better and is still mourning the loss of his daughter, is just ignoring it. He's not stepping in, he's not correcting Cupi, he's not offering any sort of comfort or anything, he's just ignoring it. And I think Teo and Sundance are doing a similar thing, not to hurt Dusk, but they obviously don't want to upset essentially the king and the queen of the Snagglefang pack because they want to have essentially good rapport with them in order to spread the ways to them. They need it. However, I want to add something kind of cool. Teo is so important to this story, guys. I know this is supposed to be a Dusk talk. As some of you may know, Dusk leaves one night without telling anybody. But the reason that he leaves, I want it to be good and not bad. I have to be really careful with how I do this, obviously, because I desperately don't want Dusk to be the dad that left his kids, right? And so a part of me played with the idea of, well, maybe he'll realize that he's dying and he leaves because he doesn't want his pups to find him dead. I'm still not 100% sold on the idea that I have. I may still end up going with that idea. This is really kind of up in the air, and this is another thing that I would love your opinions on. I've heard multiple opinions on why Dusk would leave and what would happen. I was thinking it might be really neat if during the days that they're together, that Dusk speaks a lot with Teo, and that Teo tells him about the goddesses and tells him about Eartha. And the way that he starts it is by saying that Dawn is safe. She's in a wonderful place with the goddess Eartha. And very much like the other wolves had said, where they're in the endless hunting grounds, that's essentially where Eartha takes the wolves to in the lore, is they are essentially in a beautiful land of plenty. She hunts alongside with her wolves, her Earthams as they're called. They hunt together. They hunt in her glory, with her glory, and they live with her, never feeling pain, never getting tired, never being hungry or thirsty or wanting for anything. And so Teo tells Dusk about the old ways. And I think Dusk takes it to heart. As he's getting better and he's fattening up a little bit again and he's feeling healthier, he's starting to heal his heart through Teo's words. And at the same time, Teo is talking to Mikhail and telling him the same things. Not together, because he's not sure that they're ready to speak to each other yet. So he's being very delicate about this whole situation. At this point, Teo's terrified of Cupi, so he hasn't been talking to Cupi about it, but he is kind of like nudging Mikhail, saying, you should tell her. We should all talk about it together sometime. But he's taking it very delicately, and he's kind of letting Sundance talk to Cupi instead. And this is kind of where Sundance and Cupi are going to have a little bit of a bond. I really want to write that out for you guys, but that'll be a later wolf talk or story. But this is happening as they're traveling to get to essentially Tower Fall, or where they'll be staying until the next litter comes. And as they have this talk, Dusk is starting to feel more and more hopeful. And he's even kind of wanting to do what Teo does and be a leader and help Teo in his goals. Kind of finding new purpose after losing the love of his life. And so I think Dusk would actually stick around a little bit longer than I originally said. I think he would stick around all the way up until the point that they got to their official site where they'll be staying. And he would even stay long enough to help the pups kind of hunt and learn how to hunt in the beginning. I think after a while, he would see how capable Mikhail and Kirby and Teo and Sundance are, and Aurora and Fridley, and he would see them all together and how much they love each other, and he would feel a great longing to have that again. I think at one point he'll talk to Teo about this, kind of having Teo be like that role model in a sense, and that confidant, and tell him, I loved Dawn and she will always be my queen, but I miss having a companion. Now, wolves mate for life, and they greatly mourn their mates for a really long time. And so that would be a part of it, is he would say, it's hard for me to see all of you together because it reminds me that I don't have her. And it's causing him a lot of pain, a lot of great pain. And he's even, he's seeing his pups grow closer to the other pups. He's seeing his pups grow closer to their grandparents, essentially. And he sees them happy, like truly happy, with the exception of Strigander, because he's not happy about anything. But you'll find out why later. But yeah, he sees that they're okay. He sees that they're happy. He doesn't want to lose them at all. And he wants to stick around, but at the same time, it's causing him immense emotional pain. And so Teo's gonna ask him, would it be easier on you to leave? And Dusk at first is like, that's out of the question. I'm not abandoning my pups. And, you know, Teo would say, well, you're not abandoning them. They're safe and you could always come back. But, you know, maybe you should go meditate to the goddesses. And I think that's what Teo's going to suggest. Why don't you take some time to meditate and talk to the goddesses and find your place with them and give Earth a space in your heart and then come back. And so he's going to convince Dusk essentially to seek a spiritual connection with the goddesses. It's all meant to be completely innocent and helpful to Dusk, of course, absolutely. And so at some point, Dusk is going to agree. And he is going to tell his pups that he is going to go find peace. And he leaves on happy terms. He explains to them what he's doing, that he's going to find peace. He's going to tell them, listen to Teo, because he'll take care of you. Like, so Dusk has a really big connection with Teo, which I love for some reason. I really love that this is ending up being a happier thing rather than he's leaving because everybody hates him. Honestly, they kind of like, they're on better terms. I think Mikhail is still kind of like, you know, you're here and I will take care of you because you're my family, but there's a disconnect. Kirby doesn't care one way or another. She really just doesn't like Dusk. But Teo has really made this connection with him. And so he tells all his pups, this is what I'm doing, but I'm coming back. And Dusk has every intention to come back. But he doesn't. I haven't decided why he doesn't yet, but it's definitely not because he found a different female and he made his other life and he just abandoned his kids. No. I also hate saying that he died, but it would honestly make sense. So he was stricken with grief. And believe it or not, animals can do this thing where they literally grieve themselves to death. In fact, I think humans can do it too. I don't know how common it is, but there are instances and cases of animals that have companions. They lose their companions, and even though they're totally fine and healthy, they pass away because of that lost companion. They simply can't bear it. It's a heartbreaking thing and a very sensitive topic to talk about. I probably need to put a warning at the beginning of this video, actually, about sensitive topics. Perhaps that happened. Perhaps he got in a tussle with a predator. Perhaps he didn't know the area as well, and he got into it with some other wolves. Maybe he wasn't as strong as he thought he was when he walked away. It could have been a number of things, but it definitely wasn't him finding some other family, making some other family. I'm not doing that to Dusk. I'm not doing him dirty like that. And I definitely don't think that's what he would do. Something prevented him from coming back, but it wasn't that. It's entirely possible that he got too far out of the Yellowstone border and something happened to him there. But he had every intention to come back and he didn't. And I think in some ways, the fact that he doesn't come back, that's going to kind of torment Teo a little bit. Like, did I send him to his death? Did he, like, he won't know what happened. Did he go off and find another family? He literally won't know. But in some ways, he'll blame himself. Like, maybe I shouldn't have sent him away. I thought I was doing the right thing. You know, I guess I need to trust the goddesses in this one, but now these pups don't know why their dad didn't come back. I mean, I'm sure that's going to bother Teo quite a bit. And the thing is that out of all of the pups, there is one pup that's been paying attention to this a little too much. And that is Stygander. He has been watching and observing everything that's been happening. Everything. Whereas the other pups are kind of oblivious. Stygander, having laid next to his brother and seeing him die, knowing that his mother died, knowing that Nightingale was killed by Crevice Lake wolves, seeing his father kind of wither away, and then watching him get verbally harassed by what is supposed to be family, he almost had to mature instantaneously, and therefore he's matured faster than the other pups, but still having the brain of a pup and other things going on behind the scenes that I don't want to speak about yet because it's kind of, I'm not going to mention it, but something else that's making him worse and think these dark thoughts. He is being driven into darkness. And he's not going to forget all these things that happened to his dad. And it's going to play a big part in the future of our WolfQuest stories. But that is the story of Dusk. That is where Dusk goes. And this episode is now, oh my gosh, I have recorded 1 hour and 40 minutes. This is a problem. So I think we should finally end it here. If I don't actually break this wolf talk into 2 episodes, we'll see. That's a lot. But if you have your own thoughts, or if you maybe want to add something, or maybe have a different idea, or maybe if there's something you don't like, just, you know, be kind, but let me know in the comments below. I'm always open for different interpretations. And like I had said previously, like, a lot of you influence kind of the way I feel about some characters, like Dusk, for example. And I wanted to have this talk to kind of shine some light on him and show him in a different way. Show that he is not the bad guy I made him out to be, that he was a victim too. And so Dusk has now been redeemed in his own way, and I hope you like the way I did it, but let me know. And if you did, tickle and poke that like button. Subscribe to join our family if you like storytelling and you want to see more storytelling through video games, and ring that bell so you're notified of when a new story is available. Also, join Discord. We love to have discussions in the Discord channel, as well as Twitch. I do go live with WolfQuest on Twitch every week, so follow me on Twitch if you want to see that. I love you guys. Thanks for listening to me ramble for so long. And I will see you next week for another wolf talk.